So welcome back to my channel. It's been a while since I uploaded any videos. You can probably tell I'm not in Europe at the moment, although it's probably quite sunny in some parts, but I'm actually in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, which is a resort town not that far from Cancun. And I'm here for a few months, escaping the cold of Portugal, or relative cold. And today I'm not just here to kind of show you loads of nice views, but it's a frequently asked question video about the Camino, generally, all the Caminos. Not one specifically, but just some general advice. I've now walked 5 Caminos, and I've been kind of getting some email questions coming in about the Camino, and also members of a lot of forums, and I kind of know the the most popular questions. So that's what I'll be doing today. I'll take you on a bit of a tour around Playa as well. Question is, when should I do Camino? Now this could you could be restricted by when you can physically get there or take time off, but if you're going to plan, particularly for the weather, then definitely I think the really good months are May and September. Obviously the weather's probably better in July and August. It'll be hotter, but you'll find way more crowds, particularly on the French way. It may differ for other Caminos, but if I just focus on the French way, May and June, very good. I've walked the Caminos through all the months in the summer, and I was even on the Camino in October this year in Galicia, and the weather was fantastic for walking. So obviously I guess November through to March and April you're going to have to contend with winter walking, so that's maybe not as desirable for most people, and needless to say way less people walk during those months. But yeah, May and September, really good months. I think they are getting busier generally. I mean, the whole Camino every year gets busier, but if it's your first one, they're really good months. Second question I'm going to address is, which Camino should I do? Now, most people do the French way, I would say, particularly for their first Camino. It's very popular. Portuguese, it's also really popular. My best advice would be probably do the French way first. If you're time limited to say 10 days or 2 weeks, then maybe consider the Portuguese way because it's shorter. But that being said, the French way, you don't have to start from France. You can start from Burgos, Logroño, Leon, Astorga, even Sarria, so you can have it as long or short as you really want. But they would be my 2 picks for the first Camino. And I walk the Camino solo on my own. The answer is most definitely yes, and many people do. It's a very sociable trail, so even if you are on your own, you're going to meet people very easily anyway. Yeah, for sure. People walk in big groups, people walk as couples, as groups of friends. You know, it's all kind of all a mix up, but don't be put off by walking alone, because you won't be short of company. There's a lot of people that walk, do it alone. I've started every Camino I've done on my own, and ended up walking many days or weeks with other people. So, and you kind of see people, even if you're not walking with them all day, you'll see them at the end of the day, or if you have a day off, you'll catch them up, and it's really sociable, particularly the French way. So don't be put off by walking alone. How do I get to the start of the Camino? Now, of course, there are many different starts of the Camino. You can pretty much start it from anywhere, even outside of Spain. But I'll talk specifically about Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port And so that's just over the French just over the French border. Most people, I guess if you're coming from the US, you're gonna probably fly into Paris or Madrid. Barcelona maybe. So from Madrid or Paris, then you can get all the way with trains. If you're coming from Madrid, probably Pamplona. If you took a train or a bus to Pamplona, and then I believe there's a bus service now right to Saint-Jean, over the mountains. If you're coming from Paris, then you'd take the train, I think, to Bayonne or Biarritz, and then you can take an onward train to Saint-Jean. If you're flying from within Europe, then Biarritz, Bayonne Airport would definitely be the best one to aim for. You're only really a train ride away from Saint-Jean there, so there you go. Is what size backpack should I carry? Now, this will obviously depend. So starting from the very smallest backpack, some people will have their luggage taken by a company, so they're carrying just a day pack, and all their clothes and other bits will be waiting for them at the hotel. I mean, that's actually quite a popular thing to do, but for most people that are carrying everything, I would say between 35 and 45 litres is probably really typical. It's probably very hard to know for sure, but I mean 30 litres would be fine, 50 would as well. If you're carrying like camping gear, for instance, which I have done, then you'll obviously need more than that, but most people can easily get away with around 35. That's possibly the sweet spot, but you know, it really depends on what you want to take and your personal preferences. Should I book ahead? Should I book my accommodation ahead? Should I just rock up and hope for the best? Now, I think increasingly people do book ahead, particularly over the last couple of years when there's been probably less accommodation available, although obviously there's been less people walking. Some people like to book the whole trip so they know every night they have somewhere. Now, of course, the disadvantage with that, I mean, it has many advantages. Of course, you can relax, take it easy, you don't have to rush. You know, there's a bed rush if you don't have a bed, and you're kind of rushing to get to the town to make sure you get a bed. If you book ahead, then you don't have that problem. But if you're going to book the whole Camino ahead, then you've got really no flexibility. If you want to have a really long day or a really short day, for whatever reason, you know, you're kind of tied to your booking schedule. And but of course places offer free cancellations, so that's always, but I tend to book. So I've walked in really busy, every time I've walked it's been really busy, to be honest. May, June, July, August and September. I tend to just try and judge it when I'm there, so maybe I'll look ahead 2 days where I'm going to likely be and look on booking and see what's available, and you can kind of judge to see how busy it is, and I kind of do that. And yeah, so you'll find your sweet spot. I'm going to talk about clothing. How much clothing should I bring? How cold is it going to be, or how hot? It's really, the answer to that briefly is that you shouldn't worry too much about clothing. You can always buy clothes in Spain, of course, and along the Caminos there's always loads of like outdoor stores or outfitters that you can buy, you know, more hiking clothes if you like. And yeah, so equally, you know, it comes down to how much you want to carry, and you know, clothes can weigh a lot. I mean, it depends what you bring. So my advice would be not to worry too much. Obviously dressing in layers is really good, and really on the Caminos you can expect weather, all different types of weather all year round really. I mean, it's less likely to rain in the summer, of course. You're probably not going to see snow in June, but it can still be cold. So yeah, layering is definitely a good plan. People that haven't done the Camino before might be intrigued about albergues and what are they and how do they kind of work. Basically, they're like hostels. They'll have, you know, some have kitchens, they'll have common areas, some are very basic, some are extremely nice. But basically the actual albergues that are just for walkers, the ones run by the parish, local parish or the local church or the local municipal, their opening hours are actually normally from midday, but you have to be out by 8 in the morning in Spain anyway. In Portugal it tends to be a bit later, but so you can't kind of laze around in the morning. Everyone's out by 8, and some will even be kind of cleaning around you at 7:30, trying to will you on to get out. So, and yeah, I mean, like I said before, they can be very cheap. Some are even by donation, although really you'll be expected to pay, of course, what you would pay in one that isn't. And they're a lot of fun. You meet a lot of cool people in them, and yeah, they can be basic, but it's all kind of part of the fun, basically. So people often ask about the Compostela or your pilgrim passport. So this is something, a piece of paper generally, although there is an app now, but generally it's a card you buy for a couple of euros from, you can pretty much get them anywhere. You can order them online or get them when you arrive in Spain. And yeah, so basically when you stay somewhere or go past a restaurant, or you get like a stamp in your passport. Now, don't sweat too much if you don't get a stamp every day, if you forget. But what is kind of important, if you want to get the certificate at the cathedral in Santiago for the last 100 kilometers, you need at least one a day. Some people say you need 2 a day, but I've never had that issue. I've only got 1 a day for that last 100 kilometers, and you know, it's very debatable really, but I guess it depends on who's going to be checking your passport. But yeah, and during the last couple of years, they've someone's, or the church or the cathedral in Santiago, they've issued an app. So maybe that's the future of Camino passports, but it is nice to have the paper one and, you know, keep it as a memory afterwards. So another frequently asked question: how much will I spend on the Camino? How much does it cost? So again, this is a very wide, broad question with a lot of answers. Basically, you can spend as little as probably 15 euros a day. Accommodation probably 6 to 8, and then you could eat from supermarkets for maybe 5 to 6. I know people that have done it for under 10 euros a day, but realistically you'll probably spend around 20 euros a day. I'll do another video about costs and budgets specifically, but really, you know, if you're staying in very basic albergues and eat from supermarkets, it can be very cheap. If you're going to stay in really nice hotels and eat out all the time, then it's going to cost a whole lot more. So continuing my little walk and talk tonight, heading down towards the beach. So another question that's asked a lot about the Caminos, and this is applicable to all of them, is what do I wear on my feet? So another question with a lot of wrong and right answers, depending on, well, there's no wrong answers. It really does depend on what you're used to walking in. All I'll say is that if we just kind of focus on the Camino Frances, the French way, most people I would think would wear like trail runners. I don't know about that, to be honest. Maybe not. I wear trail runners, so a lot of the French way is very flat. You're walking on like tarmac or dirt tracks or very well formed trail. So you, in my opinion, you don't really need a heavy hiking boot. There are some sections that are sometimes a bit rocky, and maybe ankle support would be good. It kind of depends. It's such an individual question, really, almost impossible to answer. But I don't know. I have used hiking boots on my very first Camino, but I just found them overkill. So I kind of tend to prefer trail runners. Now, you'll see people wearing all sorts. Some people just wear kind of regular sneakers or running shoes. Some people wear sandals. I've even seen people wear flip-flops. I saw one guy wearing bare feet one time. So, and I've seen people wearing like the kind of boots, heavy duty alpine boots you'd kind of expect to see in the Alps. So yeah, it's a very hard question to answer, but I really think trail runners are really good for the Camino. And yeah, that would be my recommendation. So another question, how hard is the Camino? Are the Caminos? Again, really hard question to answer, because it kind of will depend on your fitness and what shape you're in, and maybe your age to some degree, or but the thing is, it can be as hard as you want it to be. The French way, I would say the first day up and over the lower hills of the Pyrenees, you have like 1,200 meters gain, like nearly 4,000 foot, and it's your first day, and if you're not really used to it, then it's a tough day. But that being said, there's another way around. You don't have to go over. There's two routes, so you can go a different route, but most people get over it anyway, and there are places to stay. I think there are now 2 places to split up that first day. So, but as for the rest, I mean, it can get quite hilly in Galicia, but by the time you're there, if you've come from France, you're kind of probably quite fit then anyway. So it's just impossible to answer how hard it is, but I would say it's not like walking through the Alps or anything. The paths are generally well kept and quite easy to navigate. So but yeah, one person's tough, it's another person's easy stroll, so it's a very hard one to answer that. So another question that gets asked a lot is, how can I stay online, get online? I mean, some people don't even want to be online in the Camino, but the reality is that Wi-Fi now is widely available, not only in the hostels and the albergues, but actually quite a lot of cities and the smaller villages in Spain. They have like public Wi-Fi in some of the plazas, the open spaces, the squares. So Wi-Fi is really not an issue. And obviously, if you want your own 4G or 5G connection, if you're coming from outside the EU, you might want to buy a SIM card, either in France, Spain or Portugal. Doesn't really matter where, you can use the same one anywhere. Spain, definitely, I think you get more bang for your buck in Spain for data. But But yeah, Pamplona on the French Way would be the first place. You would probably have more choice of buying a SIM card. I've tended to use Vodafone and Orange in Spain because at the time I've been there, they've had the best deals, but obviously there are other providers. But yeah, and the coverage is really good in Spain, particularly along the Camino. The French Way, you're kind of going through lots of villages, lots of towns, and I think it's very rare not to have a connection, so which is good for safety if you're on your own, and it's always good to be connected or have the ability to connect. So here's another interesting question that I sometimes see asked, but basically about water on the Camino. Firstly, you can drink tap water in Spain, Portugal, France, any EU country. Some people prefer not to because can sometimes taste a bit funny, but I've never had an issue in Spain. And there are fountains, fuentes, basically everywhere in Spain, every village. If you download one of the walking apps, like I use Windy Maps, the fountains, drinking fountains, are actually marked. So for this reason, I tend not to carry too much water on the French Way. Maybe a litre and a half, perhaps. There is one long stretch, 17 kilometres. You'd probably want to carry more, but again, a lot will depend on the weather. If it's really hot, but water's very plentiful, and yeah, you can drink it out of the tap. I mean, obviously you can buy it as well. Yeah, very important topic, of course. Okay, another question. Hiking poles, trekking sticks. Do I need them on the Camino? So, and can I transport them if I'm flying into Spain? So my answer really is, of course it depends on the individual. I never actually used to bother with them, but I guess as I've got a bit older, yeah, I find them really beneficial. So for me, if I'm in really mountainous terrain, rough terrain, I will always have two. If I'm kind of in any other hike, including Caminos, then I now take just one. And yeah, that's basically me. They definitely help your balance, you support your knees. I think you can't really argue that they're beneficial. Of course, there's more weight to carry. And most Caminos aren't really that rough terrain, so it's possible that you might not need to use them. But I would say most people generally do, and you can, of course, buy them in Spain. And this leads me on to the question, can I take them in hand luggage? Now, maybe some airlines might let you, but I think the majority now won't allow hiking poles. I was going to carry a tent once in hand luggage, and I did quite a lot of research, and even the tent poles, yeah, even those, I came to the conclusion that there's a good chance they'll be refused entry. Obviously, checked in luggage, you can put them in hiking poles. So, but yeah, of course, you can buy them in Spain. Decathlon sells them really a cheap price, almost cheap enough to just use them and then give them away at the end. Okay, another question. Will I be able to walk the Caminos this year, 2022? Okay, so firstly, there are people walking now, January 2022. My Facebook group, a number of people walking, posting pictures. They obviously finding accommodation okay. So this looks really good, but of course, no one knows what's going to happen. No one can predict what's going to happen, but I'd say the signals are really good that maybe this year it's the year we kind of get over all this and get back to some degree of normal. So the other thing to remember, I've walked Caminos, many people have, the last 2 summers, so I think the world is in a much better place at the moment. So I'm pretty optimistic that people will be again returning to the Caminos in quite big numbers this year. I think it'll be a few years before we start seeing 2019 numbers, but yeah, I don't think there's any reason why you can't walk this year. The only thing's obviously to ensure is that you can get into the country wherever you're starting from, and that, you know, obviously there's no restrictions within the country in terms of hotels and hostels and moving around. But yeah, optimistic for 2022. Okay, guys, I'm going to wrap this up now. Just like to thank you all for following me, and it'd be great if you could subscribe, like the video, and congratulations for getting to the end of this one, because I've probably been waffling quite a lot. It's just hard to, so much to say on these questions, you know, so many different answers, but hopefully this has given you some idea. And yeah, I'll be doing kind of specific Q&As at some point. If I ever get enough subscribers, I might even do a live Q&A, but I think we're a little way off that for now. But anyway, yeah, adios from Playa del Carmen.